Alright folks, welcome back to Procreate. So we're going to talk about the transform panel. Now, there's a whole lot of application for the transform panel being done throughout this course, but in version 4.3, I thought we'd update the transform lesson so that we got a good look at what we're looking at. So let's go ahead and just start off with an object. So I've just got a single layer open. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink in, let's just grab a normal studio pen. Let's grab something kind of in the brownish red range there. And let's go ahead and just make an oval. I think that looks pretty good. And now let's flood fill said oval. Again, make sure your flood fill is solid. And now let's give it kind of a highlight. Let's go ahead and go to white. So I just bring up a normal white. See, we can probably get a little brighter than that. And making sure my studio pen is there. Let's go ahead and put a solid white highlight in. Ooh, okay, let's not do it that way there. Let's go ahead and fill it in the old-fashioned way then, if Procreate's going to be touchy. All right, cool. So we got this thing, kind of looks like a coffee bean. So your transform panel is up here where this blue arrow is. And now, this looks rather intimidating, but it's actually not. Let's start off with this upper arrow here. Now, this upper row here, you'll see we've got freeform. This is going to allow you to move the image any way you want. So if I grab this middle right, I can pull it out and deform the image. I grab the top, I can shrink it up and down. If I grab the green handle, I can move it around. So now if I wanted to move it in proportion, you can always grab the corner. Alright, so that's how to move it in freeform. Now if you go to uniform, right? Now, again, we can grab it by the corner and move it around, but watch what happens now when we grab the middle handles. You'll see it still moves in a uniform direction. The only difference is what point it moves from, but it keeps the aspect ratio locked. So that's the difference between freeform and uniform. Now, distort. Distort is going to allow us to do things. Now, I'm going to grab the lower right-hand corner and I'm going to begin shearing this thing over. You see that it begins to distort. Now we got some weird looking cherry bowling ball looking thing. So this is distort. It allows you to distort the image, and it's different than freeform because freeform won't allow you to shear it. Now the last one that I'm going to show you here is warp. And warp, folks, there's a whole application for this later where we apply this texture. Warp is a ton of fun. So you go to warp, and what that does, it creates a grid mesh. Now, with the grid mesh, you can come in and you can begin adjusting the grid mesh. So you see, we can actually create some pretty cool shapes with this. Now, if you wanted to, you see the first item in the row below says advanced mesh. Look at that. Now we can begin manipulating this by dragging the nodes in the intersections. This is actually pretty cool. And this is actually beginning to look kind of like a logo for a national food chain, so we're not going to go too much further than this. So that's really the warp. Now, let's take a look at flipping it horizontally. It's exactly what it sounds like, right? Flipping vertically, you see I'm tapping it, and I'm flipping it vertically. And now, rotate 45, exactly what it sounds like. You can make it all the way around the horn. Now, you can fit it to a canvas, and it will get a little larger. And you see how this lower left point is not quite against the canvas. Now, the last thing that you could do if you wanted to, you could reset it back to its normal state. You see that's all the way over on the right-hand side. So there's a lot of power in the transform. Now, you might be wondering why I skipped over the interpolation setting here. Now, the interpolation now is currently highlighted in blue because these things add up. Now, what interpolation is? It's how Procreate takes the pixels and then makes a guess as to how you would like to see it. As an example, if I was to pick nearest neighbor, when you zoom in to a pixel type of art, it may make it jagged and choppy. If you're using line art, I would highly recommend that you tell Procreate to look at it from a bilinear standpoint. But if you're using pixel in order to shade it out and get a nice smooth gradient, I would highly recommend that they look at it bicubic. Now, what does that mean in reality? Let me show you this here. We're just going to go to freeform, and I'm going to blow this thing up, right? You'll see that as we blow it up, the pixels that are created here, you see kind of that whole gradient that's created. It's because I got a bicubic interpolation for the transformation. So it's saying average out those pixels, do the best you can, so that if I get really super crazy on the size, you got it under control and it's going to be smooth. Now, I personally don't worry about this a lot because I tend to work in sizes very close to what my end use is going to be. So if it's a 1920 by 1080 form, I usually work in 1920 by 1080 so that I don't have to interpolate when I transform. But there are times where you'll create an image that's that big when you do it, and then you want to blow it up later and transform it to something that's much larger. You may want to set this interpolation so that it gets larger in the way that you want it to. You don't want to blow it up and then find that it's, blocky and bulky. So that's a little bit on transform. We're going to apply some texture here in the next lessons that will help you understand when to use the warp and how it can be used along with different texture brushes. So stay tuned for that. And now let's get on to the next mechanical one.